Hi, I'm Chris Fleming, the creator of Spirit Talk. You're listening to the podcast where I'll be bringing you the greatest thinkers, researchers, and contributors from around the world to discuss what we know in the field of the paranormal, life after death, and the pursuit of higher consciousness. On this episode of Spirit Talk, we're going to talk about heaven and another place in between called the White Room. Hey, all the paranormal investigators out there and ghost hunting enthusiasts. Check out ghostoutlet.com. That's ghostoutlet.com. It's a website I've had since 2006, going 14 years now, selling ghost hunting equipment, SB7s, REM pods, SLS cameras, and more. Check it out. Now, if you're looking for a reading or spiritual consultation, just Google or go to your search engine and type in Chris Fleming Genbook, Genbook, and you'll see the list of services that I offer. Take a look at the calendar, book a date and time that's convenient for you, and you are all set. I'm currently working on a brand new website, ChristopherFleming.com, through Wix, so hopefully I'll have that up within the next month. That'll have a bunch of new features and let you know on any updates of events or virtual seminars that I'll be doing in the future. All right, let's get to the podcast. Welcome to the Spirit Talk podcast. This is Chris Fleming, and this is April 2020 episode. So have you ever wondered, is there a heaven? A place we can go to when we die? When it comes to life after death, that question of mortality, the biggest question since the beginning of time is, where do we go? Well, most of us that are in psychical research, which is the study of consciousness, the study of another place, as well as those of us paranormal investigators communicating with ghosts and spirits, is we want to know if there is life after death. Do ghosts exist? Ghosts, the manifestations of the consciousness of those that have passed away before us. Now, a couple months ago, I talked about past lives, and I shared some of my stories and my experiences. And I received amazing, amazing feedback from that. So I want to thank many of you who wrote to me, told me your own stories, your own questions and interests in past lives in regards to that particular podcast. And I know that this podcast right now, this edition, which is going to be April, even though we are going into May, is a bit late. So I do apologize. Obviously, with everything going on, there's other things been going on that have kind of distracted me from completing this. So I want to hone back in and share with you what we're going to talk about in this episode. We're not going to talk about earthbound spirits, those that go to purgatory, penance. We're going to talk about a haven where souls go. Now, if you've seen the movie Astral City, A Spiritual Journey, it's about a deceased doctor taken out of purgatory and brought to a spirit colony where he learns about the afterlife. This was channeled through a psychic named Chico Xavier, a famous psychic in Brazil, and he wrote over 400 books of spirits telling him about the afterlife. Now, there's interesting similarities to what he wrote and what's in that movie. Now, in regards to other people that have had near-death experience and some people that have had out-of-body experiences, there is this plane of existence just outside Earth, but not quite in heaven. There are many levels of existence that we go to, and this place is a haven. It's like Earth, but you don't have the physical pain and the problems. You learn a few things before you move to the next level, and once you do those certain tasks and you let go of some of those remaining attachments, then you can evolve to the next spiritual level. And it's at this plane you can be reborn again and have another life and come back with other people. But the place that I want to talk about is heaven, where we go and we create our own paradise and the experiences in between of that white room. So what am I going to do? Well, first let me just backtrack and share with you. Obviously, you know from listening to Spirit Talk, and if you've been to any of my lectures, that I've had paranormal experiences since I was a child. But I remember in 92, my mom handed me a book. She goes, "You got to read this." And it sat on my dresser for a long time, a couple months, until I finally sat down one day and I read it. And it was a huge revelation for me because it answered a lot of questions. I knew a lot about ghosts and spirits, and they told me bits and pieces about the other side and the afterlife. But here was someone in the book, Embraced by the Light, written by Betty Eadie, that had gone to the other side and is now writing about what she saw, what she experienced. And she shares it with us when she came back. That opened up a new door for me of understanding and knowledge. So for 28 years since then, I've studied and researched near-death experiences and some out-of-body experiences. I read the books Saved by the Light, Daniel Brinkley, Eben Alexander's Proof of Heaven, Anita Morjani, Dying to Be Me, and I just have a library of near-death experience books. Plus, I've interviewed many people over the years, including Betty Eadie and Daniel Brinkley, who have been on previous Spirit Talk podcasts. I'm sure you can find it in our archives. I had this quest to learn more and more about the afterlife because, number one, I wanted to know where my soul is going to go. But I've had some of my own personal experiences where I've been out of body, where I've gone to the other side. I spoke about some of them in some of my lectures, and maybe bits and pieces on some of my podcasts. And in January of this year, I spoke in Evanston, Illinois at the Evanston Hospital for the Chicago International Association of Near-Death Studies about my experiences and the details that I witnessed. And I hope to in the future to post some of those videos to share with you from that lecture. So in this podcast, I want to share with you those personal experiences I had and what I saw in detail. And you can come to your own conclusion. Recently, I spoke to someone that also had gone to this white room, this place of existence, this dimension that is not quite in heaven. It's in someplace else, like a meeting area where you meet with your guides or loved ones and then you come back. This happens in an astral plane or an out-of-body type way where your spirit, your consciousness goes there, your soul, for a brief moment, gets a message, learns something, speaks to somebody, and then comes back. It's not crossing that threshold into heaven where you just don't return. Now, we know in ITC, and as paranormal investigators, we've received responses from ghosts and spirits that are earthbound, saying, "Send me to heaven." They've said heaven to the light, "Pray for me, help us, help me." Angels, "I see the light. Where's God?" Spirits that are lost and trapped, and many more. Here's an example of that we captured at the Queen Mary. A child spirit basically telling us where she wanted to go. So what is it like in these other places? What happens when our soul leaves this plane, removes any attachment, and crosses that bridge, goes into that tunnel, travels with our guides or angels to go home? We all go home. Some of us, it's our time. Some of us, it's not our time, and we're sent back. I've been there. So in this episode, I'm going to share with you those stories, those experiences. Now, I know some of you may believe in an afterlife, may not, and think that when you die, that's it. I'm not going to try to force you to believe anything, but I have a responsibility to share with you what I saw and what I experienced so that you can start questioning it yourself, as well as pursuing your own research in the afterlife, involving all the data and stories and experiences of other people. Since the beginning of time of an afterlife, every culture, every religion, and even people that don't believe that have had experiences and come back. You just have to do the research. All these opinions do add up. So, how did it begin? The earliest experience I remember when I was a kid. I had a dream about my sister drowning, And I told my mom, and 6 months later, the event occurred, but because of the precognitive dream, we changed the outcome, was able to send my sister's life. So she didn't die, like I saw in the vision. But then a year or two later, I had a dream. I remember I went to sleep that night, and next thing you know, I'm kind of floating right above our house. And I see my dad. I see his soul and his spirit glowing, and I see him flying up into this void, like going up into the sky. So I chase after him, and there's no longer a sky, there's no longer stars, and it's going through universes and just through this tunnel, whatever it was, of darkness. And all of a sudden there was a light on the other side, walking through this doorway. My dad flies through this doorway, and I see this beautiful place with grass and hills and paths, something like you'd see in The Wizard of Oz. And there's this white, kind of like crystal city, this long, narrow tower. There was no windows. I mean, they had windows, but there's no glass. And he flies all the way up to the very top and goes through that window area, flies right in, and I follow in, and all of a sudden I see him sitting there wearing a white pearlescent robe, slight little light blue tint to it, and all these other people there, women, men, celebrating, playing violins and drinking and feasting and this huge celebration, kicking back in all this joy, dancing, and laughter. Something you'd see from like the Renaissance period. And I see my dad in this joy, and I'm thinking, oh my God, my dad's in heaven. Now remember, I went to a Catholic school, so we believed in heaven and believed in hell. So I'm like, oh my God, my dad died, and now I'm seeing him in heaven. And my dad turns to me, he's like, son, what are you doing here? I said, Dad, why did you die? He's like, son, I didn't die. My soul just decided to come here just for a brief moment, and I'll be back. I said, no, Dad, you're dead because you're in heaven. He's like, son, you don't understand. And he was right. I didn't understand as a child. I didn't understand how the soul works traveling from one place to another. He said, son, go back to your body, go back to sleep. Everything will be fine. And I'm like, no, I'm crying. And I get sucked backwards. And next thing you know, I wake up crying. In the morning, I tell my mom that Dad had died. I saw him in heaven. And she's freaked out because, the previous dream about my sister. My mom calls up my dad, and my dad says, I'm fine. He was in another city, whatever it was, for hockey. So I was confused. Well, how come I saw my dad and yet it didn't come true and he's alive? So my mom's like, it's just a dream. But I knew it was more than a dream. And my dad says, one day you'll understand. And he's right. One day I did, as you'll see later on in this podcast. So that was one experience. There was another. I went to St. Teresa in Palatine, Illinois. And we used to have uniforms. The boys and girls had uniforms. And we had this gold collared shirt with brown pants. And the girls had to wear this like checkered pattern dress. And during recess, middle of the day, we'd go out for a period of time to go play outside in either the parking lot or on the grass. And I remember we were behind the church, and we had a tennis ball. One of the kids had a tennis ball, and we were throwing it against the wall, and we were catching it. And just playing that game, who would get the ball after you throw it. Well, for some reason, one kid took the ball and he threw it down the stairs. Goes down into a cellar or basement of the church, and threw it down those stairs. So the one kid, Johnny, whose ball it was, and that's his real name, Johnny, he raced down the stairs to go get his ball. Well, for some crazy reason, kids do the stupidest thing. You just don't know why. Two kids start spitting on him. And it might have been because we didn't allow them to play. I don't really remember. But I remember them doing this. I'm like, wow, that's completely wrong. That's disgraceful. Why are you doing that? So I raced over to the top of the stairs and told the kids to get away. Well, Johnny's covering himself. He's like, stop it. Why are you doing that? He turns around and sees me at the top of the stairs. Not realizing I'm there to try to prevent them from doing it and getting in between them. He comes racing up the stairs, embarrassed because some of the other kids were laughing, jumps on top of me. I fall on the ground on the grass behind me, and he starts punching me. I'm in shock because I didn't do anything wrong. I'm trying to help him, and why is he doing this to me? Well, when you're at a young age like that, you don't know why someone would turn on you. You're not able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes at such a young age. All of a sudden, I'm whisked out of my body. And I'm in this white, like a white room, but they're not walls. The ground is white. and everything around us is white, but I don't see any corners. It's like a fog, but it's not a fog, if that makes sense. And next thing you know, there's these two tall beings next to me. They're really tall, and they're in these pearlescent robes, very similar to the robe of what my father was wearing. And they put their arms on each shoulder, and they said, Chris, it's going to be okay. This will pass. And they said, look. And I said, well, why am I here? And they said, turn around. I turn around, and there's this circle. The one puts his hand on the whiteness, and all of a sudden it opens up like a little circle of a well. And it's kind of blurry a little bit. Now we're able to see Johnny on top of me punching me. And I said, well, how can I be here and then I'm there? He goes, for your safety. And I said, well, why is he punching me? He says, because he's hurt, he's embarrassed. It's not your fault. So we didn't want you to feel this. So, I'm asking little kid questions because I have that mental mindset. I didn't quite understand. And they said, okay, now it's time to go back. And I wanted to ask him these other questions, and I was whisked away back into my body. And as I was in my body, I opened up my eyes, and he's like, why won't you fight back? And I said to him, because I didn't do it, and you're not upset at me. It's okay. I said something like that. He gets up, he walks away, and the other kids surround me, and I'm looking up at him as I'm laying on the ground. They're like, are you all right? Why didn't you fight back? I said, because he didn't mean it. And they kind of thought I was crazy. They made a few comments, and I got back up, and then I kind of just forgot about it. I wasn't mad. I wasn't upset. I knew that it was just a mistake. And somehow these two angels allowed me to experience that. Now, they didn't have wings. They were just people, very tall people, and they had these white pearlescent robes on. It'd be interesting because years later, I see these types of beings again. Who were they? Well, I believe that I knew that they knew who I was, and I knew them, but I couldn't remember after I came back. I assumed they were some type of angels, but I believe they were either our guardians or our guides. They were not the Michael, the Raphael, and the other types of angels. Gabriel, it wasn't them. These were spiritual guides. So now I realized that, okay, I've got some protection that's going on. We were doing the Ouija board once, me and some friends from school. It was after school, of course, at my house. And a spirit was telling us that we can leave our bodies and we don't always remember. Would you like to experience it? It was like, sure. It says, So they tell us to lay down and rub each other's temples right behind the eyes with both fingers at the same time in the same motion. Close our eyes and relax and focus on our breathing. Some type of meditative state they were trying to tell us. Well, we all did that, and we all had these vivid dreams. Then I remember it was my turn again to do it. And I said, I really want to experience this. As I was doing this, I went into a really relaxed state, and I was like, take me somewhere, take me. And all of a sudden, I shoot out of my body. I put my hands and arms in front of my eyes as I go to hit the ceiling, and I pass right through it so quickly. And next thing you know, I move my arms away from my eyes, and I realize I'm in space. I see the stars. I see the darkness. I turn around real quickly, like, boom, I completely shift around, and I see Earth. I see it glowing. And I tell you, it was beautiful, the way it was illuminating. Imagine being in this dark void, and you have this planet that is lit up because the sun bouncing off of it, but then also all the city lights as well that you can see in space. Now, I was terrified because my child mind is like, wait a minute, my body is now in space. It wasn't my body, it was my soul, my spirit. But when you're in that form, you don't even think of the body. You think just like you do as a human being in the human body. You think, I got to touch the ground with my feet. I'd be able to grab something. And if I'm floating like this, I'm going to fall. So I scream like, ah! And all I'm thinking is like, I want to be back in my body. And I start escalating downwards super fast. And now I'm screaming even more because I think I'm going to go splat as I hit Earth. But I shot right through the ceiling, right back into my body. And I sat up real quickly, gasping for air, because once the soul's back in the body, you have to breathe properly. It's a timing. It's a coordination thing. And both of my friends freaked out because I come back screaming. I scared the heck out of them. I said, I never want to do this again. Little did I know that I had an out-of-body experience, an induced out-of-body experience where my consciousness and my soul was outside my body. Somehow we were able to do that from what the Spirit was telling us. Now, when we fast forward through grade school, high school, college, I didn't mess too much with this stuff. We did seances and stuff like that, but I didn't really focus on out-of-body experiences or anything like that. I just chalked those up to very unique experiences. When I started doing Dead Famous, we would communicate with some of the souls and spirits, and I would use various types of equipment, mediumship, channeling. We wanted to do some different things. So we started looking into regression therapy, ways that out-of-body experiences can be induced through regression. And one episode, Bing Crosby, we tried to get my co-host to do it. She couldn't do it. So they said, okay, Chris, you got to do it. And I actually have the audio of the whole session on recording. It's on cassette somewhere in the basement. But I was regressed into this relaxing state where he says, we're going to send you somewhere where you can communicate with Bing Crosby. Next thing you know, I'm in this white room. Just like I described earlier. I'm in this white room, but this time there was these chairs all the way around me, these white chairs, and souls were sitting in them, but they weren't looking at me. They were looking straight ahead, almost like they were frozen in time. And I was kind of freaked out because I felt like I was not supposed to be there. I was intruding somehow. Was it a remote viewing? Was it just a regression that sent me there? I don't fully know, but I know I was consciously there. And I see these 2 or 3 beings, similar to the guides I had before, but these were different because they didn't have faces like a regular human person. They had these bulbs of light, like a fishbowl, like a big fishbowl that was glowing. And I realized that these things were ancient. They were like the creators of the universe somehow. They were involved with something so powerful, you don't question them, you don't speak to them. They speak to you. So I was actually a little intimidated. And I'm looking at them going, oh no. I mean, obviously they got to be aware I'm here, but why they're allowing me here. And all of a sudden, the chair next to me, the person that was sitting there, starts changing shapes and forms as if all these different souls and spirits quickly change shapes and forms as if many lives are now being fast forward right in front of me. And then it stops on one. And the soul turns to me and says, I am the soul that was known as Bing Crosby. And I'm like, what? Aren't you Bing Crosby? I am the soul that was known as Bing Crosby. I have had many lives. You've had many lives. And then all of a sudden I see the flashes again of it was a child, was a woman, was a man, and all these different characters that soul had played in different places of time. And then I realized, oh my God, past lives are true. We do have multiple lives. He says, you are calling to a certain fragment of my soul that had an experience known as Bing Crosby. But when you address me as Bing Crosby, I am more than Bing Crosby. I'm all these other people. Okay, so now at this point, while I'm sitting there, I kind of felt stupid. Like, all right, then why am I even bringing this up? Because I only want to talk to the Bing Crosby part, but you're telling me you're so much more than that. Why would I even bother just talking about that? Because now I felt like it was insignificant. So I sat there for a brief moment looking at this going, I was dumbfounded. And says, I have to go, I'm fulfilling another life, which means that right now he's fulfilling some other life somewhere else. And I'm like, are you Bing Crosby? And he says, no, I'm somebody else. And then he was gone. Then these white beings started walking towards me, and I was a little intimidated. And I felt it was time to go, and then I was back into my body. Now what's interesting is this was like a white room. It was like a fog, but there wasn't a fog, and there was no walls or corners. And the ground that we were on, I don't know if we were just floating and it was just this whiteness. It wasn't a bright, illuminating white. It was like if you see a white floor with no seams, but when you look at it from a distance, you don't know where it begins and where it ends, if that makes any sense. It's not a void like you feel like you're going to fall through. It's just like it's like being in an eggshell, but you don't know where the floor is. So that was amazing to have that experience. Now, I had a different experience that wasn't in the white room, but was actually in a place within heaven. So a couple years later, 2006, we're trying to contact Janis Joplin. Now, this was during the TV series Dead Famous. We did 32 episodes, and we had 30 different famous people that we attempted to communicate with. Some of them we did. In this episode, we tried to regress Gail, my co-host, who was a skeptic, to have an experience and open up her soul and consciousness so that she could start seeing spirits and have experiences with them. Needless to say, dealing with her ADHD and her stubbornness, she could not get regressed. And she just said, I can't have it done. So, of course, they had to go to me to have it done. I was a little disappointed because I wanted her to have that experience. But, I have to do this. I have to see what I come in contact with. I didn't know what to expect. So, sure enough, they regress me into this relaxing state. And I'm in this void. It's all darkness. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is kind of different. It's all darkness. It's like being in the dark, but I felt safe. I didn't feel like there was things going to come at me. But then all of a sudden I see this little pinprick of light in the distance, and quickly it comes forward. Kind of like a little lightning bug, but it's not buzzing around. And as it gets closer, it opens up like an oval, and this hand comes out. And I see it's a woman's hand, but it's dark. So I had the sensation to reach for it and grasp it. And as I did that, I get pulled through this circle out of the darkness into this beautiful valley. I'm on the side of this like mountainside, like a valley. And there's all this grass and beautiful flowers. And I'm in complete amazement because just a microsecond ago, I was in this darkness. Now I'm in this gorgeous place. I'm overwhelmed with its beauty. And I'm looking around and I feel not only this beauty by what my eyes are showing me, but I feel this thing that I'm trying to recognize. And as I look down on the grass and the flowers, and then I look in the distance in the trees and the water that's glistening, I notice everything is sparkling. How is this thing sparkling? Like it's shiny, but yet it's all sparkling. And then when I look at the sparkling, I realize I become a part of that sparkling, which is a part of that grass and a part of the flowers. And I realize every one of these little details is alive. It's conscious of itself and conscious of my presence being there. And I'm feeling this unconditional love coming from it. And then as we start walking, she says, walk with me. And I'm holding her hand. And I haven't really looked her into the face yet because I'm in amazement to where I'm at. Like, how could this be possible? Because it was more real than real to me. And I'm looking at this going, wow, this is beautiful. Oh, wait a minute. We're, the grass and the flowers, they're alive, but we're stepping on them. And all of a sudden, I'm at the perspective where my foot's coming down on the blade of grass. I'm now part of that grass. And I'm seeing that my foot is not crushing the blade of grass. It's becoming part of it. Like a ghost, it goes through a wall. But yet this is melding and becoming one with the grass. And then you see these little sparkles come forward as if it becomes one. Kind of like a hologram. You put your hand through a hologram. But that hologram becomes part of your hand becomes part of the hologram. And I'm like, oh my God, we're made of the same makeup, the same frequency and the same energy as the grass and the flower. I'm made up of the same thing. I'm like, what is this? And then all of a sudden I start hearing this tone. It's like I'm going into the quantum level of it, and I'm hearing this beautiful tone. And this beautiful tone is being projected. I'm like, where's it being projected? And I see it being projected to the Creator from the blade of grass, the flowers, the water, the trees, and even myself is sending consciously, like thought transference, right to the Creator saying, we love you. And what's coming back, like tenfold, is this unconditional love from the Creator right back. And then I see this cycle. And the cycle's going to and from, to and from, to and from. And then I realized that that's what's keeping everything going. It's keeping the Creator going by receiving the love from what it created and then giving it right back. And then I'm seeing the blades of grass and the flower are only existing because the Creator's sending it the unconditional love and they're giving gratitude right back to it. So this cycle that's going around is like what lights up a lightning bolt. What creates the light, what creates its very existence, this energy like a dynamo spinning around, giving energy. And the love and receiving of the love is what's keeping that energy going. Therefore, the manifestation of the blades of grass and the flowers. but yet this tone is also being emanated from the frequency of this energy. And it was a beautiful tone. Being washed in that tone, there was no fear, no worry, no nothing. I didn't even care about where I was from. I just wanted to stay in this balance, in this frequency forever. And in such awe, I look up to her, finally look up to her face, and she's glowing. She says to me, "Does this answer all your questions?" I said, "Yeah." What did she mean by that? Well, before we started the regression I was put under, the director gives me this piece of paper that had 10 questions on it, all numbered, specific questions to ask Janis Joplin. Some of them were, well, are you upset that you died from a drug overdose? Do you miss doing music? What was your favorite song? Did it ever bother you that you used to get teased that you looked like a boy? What do you miss most? Those were just some of those 10 questions. And she says to me, "Does this answer all your questions?" What did she mean by that? What she meant was, when you are in this place, you are home. When you are in this place of unconditional love, the closest to the creator that you could be, the source that is you and you being the source as well, collectively there with all creation, you don't want to be anywhere else. So those questions, which are earth questions, based on just a fragment of your life, don't matter. And I look at her, I go, "Yeah, who cares about the questions?" So we start walking. I said, "So this is heaven?" She goes, "No." I look up at her like, "No, this isn't heaven. Then where the heck are we? Because this is beautiful, and this is what I would imagine heaven to be." And so I start thinking real quick in my head, what, am I going to hell? I'm an intruder in this place? And before I could finish formulating the question in my mind, she smiles like, "No, silly." She goes, "This is my heaven. Yours will be even more beautiful." And I quickly look back at the grass and the trees and the glistening and the mountains, and I'm like, how could mine be more beautiful than this? Because this is just amazing. I look back at her. She goes, "One day you'll know." I'm like, wow, my dad said that. So we start walking, and I said, I really didn't ever listen to your music, or maybe I did, and I didn't really care for it, and this and that. And she says, "I know, it doesn't matter. We pick and choose what we like and we don't like when we go." And we talked a little bit more, and I can't remember the conversation, and I wish I did, but I was not allowed to bring that conversation back. And all of a sudden, I start hearing these voices. And we stop. I'm looking at her, and she looks to her. It was her left, and I look to my right, because we're both looking at where the source is coming from of these voices. She goes, "They're calling you. It's time to go back." And I said, "But I don't want to go back." And now we're holding both hands. She's holding both of my hands, and I'm holding hers. Like, I'm feeling this unconditional love for her, and I'm like, "Thank you so much for allowing me to be here." I'm like, "But I don't want to go back." She's like, "You have to go back. It's not your time." I said, "Can I just stay here longer?" And she goes, "Not now." And then I started getting emotional, but I started arguing, like, I don't want to get back. And then all of a sudden, like a vacuum sucking up a piece of lint, I'm getting sucked backwards, and I'm reaching out to her like, "No." And next thing you know, I'm back in my body. And I start crying. And even though I'm still tired and I'm still in this relaxed state and my eyes are closed, I'm getting emotional. I'm like, "Why did you bring me back?" "Well, you have to come back." I said, "No, I wanted to stay there. Why didn't you let me stay there?" And I was getting a little angry at this therapist. He says, "Listen, I'm going to teach you a technique. You can always go back to that place." I go, "It'll never be the same." I was acting like a child when you had this toy taken away, right? Like you're never going to see the toy again. The crew, seeing my emotion, kind of stepped back and gave me peace. And they were like, the director's like, "Just leave Chris alone for a little bit," because I was in an emotional state. Like, reality hit that I was back in this world when I didn't want to be here. It was, and still is to this day, one of the most profound experiences I ever had. Never made it on the show, because the show was supposed to be scary, this and that. And I fought for them to put this on the show, and they wouldn't. But that's okay. Maybe it was never meant to go on the show. So this was heaven, but she says, "This is not your heaven. This is my heaven. Yours will be more beautiful." What does she mean by that? We'll talk about that later. So this was 2006 that this occurred. In 2009, I got in a car accident, was rear-ended, suffered a mild TBI, but I lost 5 days of memory from the car accident. And then I would have certain problems with my short-term and long-term memory disappear, getting dates mixed up and stuff like that. It's basically because the synapses in the brain have been affected where the passageways are cut off and information being sent from one point to the next was getting not sent, was getting lost. So your brain tries to fill the void, so it will grab whatever it can at the time. Really bizarre experience. Sometimes I still experience this, not as much as I did at that particular time. But the other thing that was happening, because I also had a neck injury from the whiplash, is if my neck was in a certain position due to the inflammation and it being off base, off center, it would cause the muscles to close up as if you're choking, cutting off the passageways, the air. So there were certain nights I would wake up gasping for air. I'd be choking in my sleep, and the girlfriend I had at the time would be waking me up. It was terrifying. There was even times when I was laying in bed that I could barely breathe. I felt like I was being choked. So I had to sit up or I didn't get to sleep all night because it was taking so much air, so much muscle pressure to push the air through my throat and my nostrils into the lungs because it was being restricted. Well, there was a couple occasions where I opened up my eyes and I was floating above my body because I stopped breathing. And I tell you, it's pretty bizarre because when you're floating above your body, like, wait, how can I be here? But yet oh my God, that's me. That's what I look like? You look really different when your soul is conscious and it's outside the body. You're like, that ain't me. I'm here, but that's the vessel, the little car that we use while we're having this experience in life. So I sat there looking at my body going, oh my God, this is what people have talked about that have hovered above their bodies. Some people saying, oh, it's sleep paralysis, it's an hallucination, it's imagination, it's a dream. No, it's not. No, it's not. There was a part of me that felt free, but I tried to go further and I couldn't, as if I was being stuck there like a magnet. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm going to die. I only have seconds. So I start yelling at myself, open up your eyes, open up your eyes, breathe, breathe. And all of a sudden my eyes open up and I gasp for air. My mouth opens up like I can't breathe. And I shoot back into my body. Now the vantage point, instead of looking down at myself, my eyes open up, I'm looking at the ceiling. I shoot up, sit up quickly, gasping for air for that last breath. Have you ever tried holding your breath or been underwater for a period of time? And then you're trying to get to the surface and you go, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. And as soon as you get to the surface, with all your strength, all your muscles in your body, you bring in as much oxygen into your lungs as you can. Otherwise, you know you're going to pass out. That's exactly what happened there. Another second or two, I probably would have not been able to do this. But as soon as the soul was back in the body, it would connect, realign, and start breathing again. And then I realized, oh my God, not only did I scare myself by looking at myself, but I almost didn't make it. So I began to realize the only reason why we're alive, obviously, is that we're breathing. And if we stop breathing, our soul goes out of the body. And that's how our soul can reconnect with our body, which when you look at a lot of ancient cultures, when they meditate, the monks and Buddhists and so on, and the Krishnas, they all talk about meditation, focusing on your breathing to get into a relaxed state. And so do Navy SEALs. They can control their heart rate and their breathing down into such a relaxed state. It's because that's what keeps us alive, is the breathing, and gets us into those higher states of consciousness. This wouldn't be the only time that I stopped breathing. There were a couple other occasions. Again, in 2010, I guess I stopped breathing because when I went to bed that night, next thing you know, I'm in that like white room. Except this time the white room wasn't as white. It was like a light gray, a light blue. I guess it was another level. And there's a guide right in front of me. Now, it's not a tall guide like some of these other ones, and there wasn't two or three, there was just one. But I knew who this person was, and he knew who I was. He was young. And I said, hey, how are you? He's like, hi, Chris. And I'm like, all right, let's go. He's like, go where? I said, well, you know, we're right in between heaven. I know this place. Let's go into heaven. Now's my time. He's like, no, it's not your time. And I'm like, wait a minute, come on. Don't tell me I have to go back. He's like, well, I said, hang on. You know, the law of the universe and the creator is free will, right? He's like, yeah, you're right. So I cross my arms and I stand there stubborn like a Taurus. So that means I have free will. If I don't want to go back, I don't have to go back. He smiles and he shrugs his shoulders. Well, you're right. You don't have to go back, but there's a good reason for you to go back. And I said, listen, there's no reason you can tell me that's going to make me go back. I don't want to go back. I'm done. He's like, yeah, I understand. I figured you'd say that. He's like, can I show you something? And I said, listen, there I am crossing my arms again, stubborn, right? I don't listen. I say, there's nothing you can say or show me that will make me go back. He goes, hey, Chris, you know better. I would never make you go back if you don't want to. I said, all right, then let's go. He's like, look to the left. So I turned to the left, and I've told this story before. So if you're hearing this again, please stay with me here. If you're hearing this for the first time, it's very revealing. I look to the left. I see all these people, and then I realize we're on some type of bridge, a ledge or a bridge. And I look down and I see just thousands of people. Thousands. The crazy thing is they're all looking at us. Me and this other spirit that I'm with, this spirit guide. And I look to him real quickly, like, who are all these people? They're all looking at us, and I don't know who they are. He smiles like, oh, thank God, like a huge revelation. And then I realize, oh, no, I just walked right into it. He says, I'm so glad you asked. Remember, free will, I have to ask before they can tell us anything. He said, these are all the people you have not met yet. And I look at him, I go, I don't even know him. He's like, of course, because you haven't met them yet. But you will when you go back. I said, I'm not going back. He says, look again. I look at them again. And I get these flashes from every single one of them. Instantaneously, as if in a microsecond, all thousands of these people. I knew them for each second. My interaction with them. Where, when, how, why. The significance of it. And I was overwhelmed with emotion. And I felt so selfish. Because I realized it wasn't about me. It was about all of them and the interaction in somehow, some way I had with them. And even some of them, the things that they were going to do for me, that they needed to do, but I needed to be there for it to be fulfilled. So I turned to him, I said, oh, I started crying, like, forgive me, I'm so sorry. It's not about me. It's about them. He says, yes. I said, send me back right now. He says, I'm glad you said that. And I was whisked back into my body. Now, when I woke up, I was like, wow, that was intense. I kind of forgot about it as time went by until I had some experiences with people from that bridge where they even said to me, I had this dream, and can you tell me what this dream means? All right, well, tell me what the dream is. And they started saying, and next thing you know, they're saying, oh my God, it was you. You were on that bridge. You're the dream I kept dreaming about. And then I have to tell them something, and I tell them something. And just one person after another, they said something about the bridge, or I would come in contact with them and there was something that I needed to do, or somehow I influenced them, or whatever it was, or I was in the right place at the right time, and it made a difference in their life. And then some of these people got to fulfill and do things that made a difference in my life. And I realized how we are all interconnected. It's like when you put that puzzle together and there's a piece missing, a big piece missing, it's not complete and it does not feel fulfilled until every person and every piece of that puzzle is in there, because it all creates one big picture. And that's what we all are important about, why we're all here. Every single person. Some of you listening right now might feel, well, I don't feel significant. I don't think I've done anything. I'm here to tell you that's untrue to even think that. And I'm sorry you think that. But I guarantee you, you are significant. You have a reason for being here. It just may not be known to you. They had to show this to me because I was on a bad path. They had to show me it wasn't about my pain. It wasn't about this. And they continued to do that as time went on. But that it was about all these other people. Sometimes we have to put our pain, our worries aside and stop being selfish and realize that we're not here always for ourselves. We're here for experiences, but we can't have those experiences unless there's other people surrounding us. That is the beauty of this. So I came back. But I still had these problems where I wasn't breathing at night. And I remember I was dealing with some pain. We go into 214, 215, the year 2014, 15. 4 or 5 years later, I have another experience. I'm on the other side now. There's the guide. There's a couple other guides. I'm in this parking lot, and I see this shopping mall. I'm like, what the heck, a shopping mall? And the guy says, come on in. So I go in, and I see all these other spirits flying in. And it goes, what do you want? And I go, what is this place? Well, whatever you want it to be. I go, it's a store. It kind of reminds me when I used to go to stores as a little kid, and I'd get certain Star Wars figures or Micronauts or whatever. And this guy smiles and goes, what else did you like? I loved the monster model kits, the Aurora monster model kits, Dracula, King Kong, Godzilla. And I've collected some model kits, garage kits we call them, of certain characters back in the 90s and 2000s. Well, he says, go look. So I go to this shelf, and there's all these different model kits. Model kits when I was a kid that I always wanted to see. Now, at first I'm thinking, okay, this is just a dream, right? This is just a fantasy dream. And I grab a cart and I start putting all these kits in there. I go, wonder if they have this model kit. How about this kit, this kit? And there they do. And so I'm grabbing all those. And the guy comes up and goes, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm getting all these model kits. He's like, why? I said, because I want to bring them with me. He's like, Chris, they will always be here waiting for you. And plus, there's so much more to heaven than just this. I said, like what? He goes, look, I turn to the left, and the wall of the shopping mall, of the store, disappears, and you see these beautiful mountains, this lake, grass, and these snow caps on the top of these mountains. And all these souls in the store start flying towards that. And I go, and he's like, go ahead, go play. That's what the guide said, go play. So I go flying, and I realize, oh my God, I'm flying. I'm free. And I realized I'm free from the physical body. I'm free from the entrapment of owning material things and buying stuff. That's not important. This being free and seeing all this beauty of nature and of heaven. And I'm realizing there's no limitation to whatever you think heaven becomes. And it creates itself for you, the environment. So as I'm flying over this lake and going towards the mountains, I've always wanted to quickly go up to a mountain without passing out. I remember going to Pikes Peak in Colorado when I was younger with my mom, and she got mad at me because I was falling asleep on the train as we got to the top because, of course, the altitude had put me to sleep. I could not stay awake at the top of the mountain. But here there was no limitations. I was flying, so I flew to the top of the hill of the mountain. I'm seeing all these other souls playing, flying around. So I fly down, and I touch my hands on the top of the mountain, and I start doing a handstand. And I realized the freedom that you can do anything when you're a spirit and a soul. And I start doing a handstand, walking, and all the spirits see what I'm doing. So they go play too. And they put their hands in the mountain. They start doing these handstands and walking that way. And we're laughing like little kids saying, wow, we're free. We can do anything here in heaven. And then I see this mist coming up on the side of the mountain. I'm like, oh, what's that? And I'm thinking, well, it's got to be water or a waterfall. So my intuition says, go check it out. So I fly to the side of the mountain. I see this beautiful waterfall. Wow, in the physical realm, in my physical body, I've always wanted to walk underneath a waterfall, to be right next to a waterfall and put my hand into it. So I start to fly towards the waterfall. As I fly towards it, and I go underneath the waterfall, right through the water, I'm back in my body. I shoot up, gasping for air. I'm like, oh my God. And a voice vibrates through my whole body saying, Chris, stop worrying about your pain and everything else. It's only temporary. This life is temporary. This heaven will always be there for you. It's not going anywhere. So don't worry anymore. Do what you have to do. And when the time comes, you will go back to this place. And I sat there in bed, and it was now the morning, and I'm sitting there going, wow, you're right. If it's always going to be there waiting for me, what's the rush? Why not get through some of these challenges? Why not make some changes in my life, do some things that are significant for myself and for others? Because if it's always going to be there, that's the reward. Then you got to finish what you're doing, the reason for you being here. So that did help me. It made me realize that I can't keep worrying like this. There's no rush. It'll be there no matter what. Now, the interesting thing is, we talked about loved ones. Do we have communication? Some people will have these in-between astral plane meetings with loved ones. And they'll be in a white room and they'll see the person, they'll talk to them briefly, and they come back and you might only remember bits and pieces of it. Yes, I've had that happen a few times. And when I do some of my spiritual consultations and readings, there are on occasions where I see their soul traveling to the other side during that sleep state, communicating with some of the guides and bringing things back. And then during some of my readings, I'll be in that white room or I'll see that little mountainside, but I can't go past it because that's crossing over into heaven. Now you wonder, can we go to this place at night when we're sleeping and see a loved one? Yes, you can. I remember a couple years ago, all of a sudden I open up my eyes and here I am in this white room, just like I talked about before. And here's my dad, all dressed in white. Now he's passed away. He passed away in 2009. So this was years later. Might have been about maybe 8 years ago I had this happen. And I go, "Hi, Dad." And I knew I was seeing my father's soul and I was there for a brief moment and he had some message for me. He said, "Son, listen." My dad used to always say that, "Listen." He's like, "Your sister can't feel or see me like you can." I said, "Yeah, Dad, I know. She's tried." He says, "I'll find another way." He says, "But I have a message I want you to give to her right now. Will you do that for me?" I said, "Yeah, Dad, what is it?" "Just tell her this. Tell her, I hear you. I love you too." I said, "Okay, Dad, I will. Thanks, son." And that was it. And I wake up that morning and I'm like, wow, I was in the white room. I saw my dad. Well, why is my dad laying in bed in white? Because he's supposed to be healthy. And I said, I don't know. Maybe it's just he decided to take that presence. I don't know. Sure enough, I get on the phone after I had breakfast, call my sister, and she's in Kentucky, so they're an hour ahead. So I tell her, I go, "Hey, I had this." "Oh, that's funny." She cuts me off. I don't even get to finish telling her about the dream. I said, "I had a dream about Dad, and he said something about you." She goes, "Oh, that's funny." She tells me, "Oh, Chris, on the way to work this morning, I saw an ambulance go by, and I remember when he died on the way to hospital in the ambulance. And I looked up and I started crying, going, Dad, I love you. I know you communicate with Chris and this and that. I hope you can hear me. I just want you to know I love you." I'm like, oh my God, Kelly. Last night I saw Dad. I astral traveled. I had a dream, whatever you want to call it. And Dad was there. He was like, "Chris, can you give a message to Kelly? Tell her, I hear you. I love you too." My sister breaks down crying. The message has been delivered. And then I realized, oh my God, I really did see my dad. And he heard my sister. So he was telling me in that white room, that place in between, something very important to get to her. It was accomplished. I gave my sister the message. So as you see from these experiences, having these out-of-body, near-death experiences and these astral travels in between, there are these dimensions and places we can go to. Now, a couple years ago, and I think I spoke about this in some of my lectures, is because there's free will in the universe, you can ask them questions, and sometimes they will show you glimpses or show you things. I said to the universe, I said, I want to know more about the angels because I know some of the experiences I've had with the angels in the past when they've said certain things that we do this for everybody. And I want to know, where are the angels? Where do they go? That night, I had a profound experience, similar to being on the mountain, similar to being at the bridge, similar to being in the room with my dad, similar to walking with Janice. This was another place, but it wasn't just all this whiteness. There was actual structure. This is what I remember. Go to bed that night. Next thing you know, I open up my eyes. I'm looking down at my hands. I'm looking at my feet. I'm like, where am I? I look around the room. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in this giant place. It's like the Greek Parthenon with these giant white pillars, but this was so much bigger and vast. The ceilings were just, 40 feet tall. Just huge. And then I look to my left and my right and I see these gigantic statues like ivory, white, of angels. And I'm like, these are massive. This is something out of Egypt, something out of the Greeks. Where am I? And then I look and I see that the ground is made of this like white pearlescent, almost like a white marble, but it had this glass ice sheen to it. It wasn't slippery, but it was so shiny. And as I'm following with my eyes and I look up and I see this gigantic chair, like a golden chair. And in the middle of it, I'm expecting to see someone sitting there. It's giant, like a giant, because you realize in this giant room, and there's this universe circling in the middle of it. Sparks and lightning bolts and planets and everything within this energy field and all these things around it, stuff that I can't even describe because I've never seen anything like it before. As if the whole universe and universes were all within this vortex. And it was slowly moving around, but it was alive and had its own consciousness. And then it says, come forth. This voice, felt it. So I start walking towards it. And as I'm walking, I feel like something's looking at me, and I'm walking by this giant toe of the statue, right? I'm like, God, this toe is bigger than me, and I'm 5'10", 5'11". And then you get that feeling, when someone's staring at you. So I look at the toe, and then I look up, and I realize that, oh my God, the statue is leaning over looking at me. It's not a statue. It's alive. These are angels that are alive. And I counted 7 of them, 4 on the left, 3 on the right. They were with armor, swords, spears, helmets. They were like prepared for battle, but yet they were stationary, not even moving until this one actually moved to look down because I was wondering, thinking they're just statues. And it moved and looked at me to say, no, we're not. And they were all there guarding and preparing and waiting for the next message of what they were supposed to do. And as I walked towards this thing, there were other presences behind, to the left and the right of this chair, and behind this chair, things that I've never seen before, but my focus was not allowed to focus on them, only what was in the center of this universe that was spiraling. And as I walked closer to it, that's all I remember. I know there was a communication. I know that there was a discussion, but I was not allowed to bring that part back. When I woke up in the morning, I was just in awe. Oh my God. And I sat there trying to remember more of it, but that's all I could remember. Where was I? Well, I did some research. I told this to my friend Adam Bly, and he told me to look up Revelations. And he told me where in Revelations, and I don't remember the exact spot in Revelations right now, but I'm sure you can find it. And I looked it up, and there were similarities. I was in this hall of angels, where the Creator would send angels down to go do what they're supposed to do. Now, I had asked to see this. Now I understand more about angels, especially Michael, Gabriel, archangels, who I believe was present in that hall. They stand waiting for the next message from the Creator, and instantly they accomplish it and they're right back in a microsecond. That's their responsibility, that's their purpose, and that's their honor and their duty. I was able to experience that. Why? I don't know the whole answer. Maybe one day I will. But it's going to these places in between and almost to the other side that makes me realize when Janice said, your heaven will be even more beautiful. So when we look at our life, where do we want to go from here? When we die from the physical body, where do you want to go? All these other people, Eben Alexander, Betty Eadie, they've had different experiences. Betty Eadie saw Jesus. Daniel Brinkley saw these beings of light. And Eben Alexander saw some loved ones in these butterflies and these other beings, intelligent beings. Everybody has a slightly different experience, but they all go to this remarkable place, which tells us that what your belief system is, what's inside you, your intent, and where you want to go is it's going to take you there. Now, when Janice says your heaven's going to be even more beautiful, at that time in 2006, 14 years ago, I didn't totally comprehend the meaning of that, but now I do. From having other experiences and talking to other spirits that have discussed heaven as well, through ITC, mediumship, and having my own out-of-body experiences, I have an overall idea for myself what that means. We paint the picture of our heaven. There's no limitations. If we believe in ourselves and we believe in a beautiful place and we're filled with that intent, with that awareness, that perception, and that love, we can create it and paint it. It says in Scripture, depending whether you believe in Scripture or not, huge revelation for me. Now I know what that means. And I remember asking the priest when I was in grade school what this actually meant. And I believe man just thinks that it's just, well, if you just had faith, you can do amazing things in this life. I think it actually means in heaven. If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you can tell that mountain to move and it would move. If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, just the size of a mustard seed, you can tell that tree to uproot and throw it in the ocean. Well, being in heaven and seeing that whatever you think is created there, and if our heaven's going to be based on what we believe, our heaven, then what we want it to be in the picture that we paint is what's going to be created instantaneously. So for me, I know I'm going to have this huge mountainside. I've seen a glimpse of it. They said it's always going to be waiting there for you. I didn't get to see the other side completely, but I know there's this lake and there's this river, and I know that there is this beautiful, huge tree overlooking the mountainside with all the animals I've ever had in my life that I've saved, that I've loved, that I've had as pets. All are going to be there on the tree, even some of the elementals that are going to be around there. And then there's going to be all these safari animals, elephants, giraffes, tigers, lions, beautiful birds, everything, everywhere. My dream's always been to be back in a Garden of Eden. And it's going to be a Garden of Eden. And it's going to be where all these animals are there. And the colors are going to be beautiful. The water is going to be crystal clear. And there's going to be these beautiful mountains and colors in the sky. And there'll be these amazing heights on the top of these mountains that you can get to instantly. That will be my heaven. And I'm sure there's going to be more that I have yet to experience that will also create that heaven. But now I understand what she meant by your heaven will be even more beautiful. One day you'll understand, my father said, is that our soul isn't always in the physical body. When we go to sleep at night, it leaves and travels to the other side, such as he did, because we get tired of being in this physical body. So we're allowed to go. We just don't always remember it when we return. We were created as spiritual beings before we were created as physical beings. So it's our awareness, our thoughts, our perception. And if we don't know what it's like, then just ask. The universe is not going to do anything unless we ask. Broadcast that frequency and ask yourself, where do I want to go? Take me there to the most beautiful place I could ever imagine. And allow that imagination, that faith of a mustard seed to create it. And it will create it. And it's waiting there for all of us when our time comes. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to disappear. There's no deadline. So the time that we do have here, whether it's good or bad, fulfill it, because it will not last forever. And I know it's tough, but do what you got to do. Put effort into it. Give to others. Try. Just try. Because when your time comes, when you're ready and the universe is ready to open up that gate and bring you home, then you can look back and say, a job well done. Now it's time to be in peace. That's the reward. This is Chris Fleming. You've been listening to this month's edition of Spirit Talk. I'll see you next episode.